Hello, welcome to another episode of Mega Manga Monday. I am Jason Hahn, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are here to talk about new chapters of Berserk. I can't believe I just said that. The newest chapters of Berserk just came out, which a little more than a year ago, one of the world's most talented artists and manga creators, unfortunately, didn't, or he's no longer with us. And his very talented apprentices and editors and his team have graced us with continuing the story. And I honestly couldn't be happier. So much to dive into, but as I said, I am Jason Hahn. I'm a writer for ScreenRant.com. I happen to write a lot of video game news, but I'm a huge manga fan, so we decided to start Mega Manga Monday to talk about the series we love and get very excited about. And today I got a couple other buddies with me who are also very excited to talk about Berserk. Steven, would you like to introduce yourself, man?
Yeah, hello, my name is Steven. I've been writing for Screen Rant for a little bit over a year now, mostly writing about Shonen Jump titles, as well as, Sonic the Hedgehog and other things. But today we are not talking about anything from Shonen Jump. Um, and I'm very excited that we're talking about Berserk today. Completely excited. So glad to be aboard.
Yeah, ever since it started kicking up again, I've been seeing plenty of articles on Screen Rant about Berserk from you. So I'm glad that your passion has been reinvigorated. But we got a new guest with us today. Andy, would you like to introduce yourself, man?
My name is Andrew Firestone of Boston, Massachusetts. I've been writing for Screen Rant for almost 2.5 years at this point. Formerly editor of the Somerville News and writer of the blog It's About Drugs, obviously, on Reddit.
Awesome, man. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to have you on. Yeah, let's just dive right into it. I am a huge Berserk fan, and I've read up on. I was a couple chapters behind until recently. It was one of those things that when Kentaro passed away, I was very hesitant to read the final chapter, just because it had that kind of emotional. I wasn't ready for it emotionally. But now that we have new chapters already available to read, I went ahead and read it, and I'm all caught up. And oh boy, well, the newest chapter is
I just want to say,
366. Go ahead,
I
man.
just want you to say, talk about your the thing that you read for 364 because I completely missed it.
Oh
If
boy,
that's okay.
oh yeah, I'm getting into it.
You're getting there.
Yeah. Steven has been a one of the biggest Berserk fans I know for a while, and as I said, I just reread the final or Kentaro's final chapter, 364, and it ended with the Moonchild. Well, the whole chapter was an amazingly personal, emotional kind of connection between the mysterious child that's been showing up throughout the series, arriving on the island with them, and having a bunch of adorable moments between Casca and even Guts. And this whole time, I have felt like, oh, it's obviously like Guts and Casca's child that was corrupted and possibly unsurely killed, transcended. We're not sure yet during the eclipse when Griffith did the unforgivable act against Casca, and this at the end of the chapter, the Moonlight Child is shown slowly transforming into Griffith,
I
and
didn't, and I missed that.
and that's like a mind blowing revelation. Like that changes a lot of things about the series, and
You missed that, Steve? Oh my god.
I did. I can't believe it. When I was reading it, I was just like so focused on like what was being said because like it was obviously written by his Kentaro's assistants. I was like hanging on every single word, and I don't even know how it happened. Like, I was just talking to Jason like a few minutes before this started, and he's like, "Oh yeah," and blah blah happened. I'm like, "Wait, what?" and I don't know. I missed it
I
completely.
literally I literally theorized that when Miura was still alive. I was writing about Berserk, and I actually theorized that. And I would like to think that before he died, he read that. Okay, go on.
Thank you for that plot twist, man. If you contributed to that, that's just that changes everything. I mean, I don't know. And I've even read the new chapters. I was kind of combing over them. There's like a couple panels where somebody is holding somebody with black hair, and I was reading it on my phone at first, and I was just like, "Is that the child?" But no, it's Casca. Like Farney is helping Casca after she passes out from the shock of Griffith showing up.
But again, that's clearly a direct visual reference to the child.
Yeah, because it's also really hard. Because like when you were telling me, after you told me that, and you were saying, Jason, that it was hard to tell in 366. So I was like looking into it. I'm like, you know what? You can't tell. Like it could be either or. But yeah, so I know exactly what you're saying, Andy. Yeah, for sure.
Well, yeah, I've got it pulled up on a bigger screen, and you can see like Casca's outline and stuff with her still wearing like the bed sheets or whatever she's wearing. But I feel like it kind of more harkens back to the time when Casca was impaired and Farney was consistently like being the mother figure for Casca. And I kind of, yeah, I felt like that was more of a connection to that relationship more than the Moonlight Child possibly still being a thing. I'm terrified that the Moonlight Child is not existent anymore. If it has been 100% Griffith this whole time, then we never have Casca and Guts's lost child part of the story, and I loved that idea. I hope that's not the case.
Well, here, if I may interject.
Please.
I think that what you're looking at is, so there's a theme of innocence in Berserk. There's this idea that Guts needs to protect the innocent, and Casca being the innocent after, arguably before, but also after her, assault by Griffith. I think that that's a very strong undercurrent of the series, that things that are innocent do need to be protected. And the linking of Casca with the Moonlight Child, that is her son. Oh, and by the way, just to be clear. So the theory is, and I subscribe to this theory, is that the Moonlight Child is actually the child of Casca and Griffith, but that's how Griffith was able to come back into the normal world through Femto. Because Femto can't go into the real world. Femto has to stay in the demon realm of the Godhead. But he can come back into the real world because he has now possessed the Moonlight Boy. The Moonlight Boy during a full moon will turn back into the Moonlight Boy. All of the other time, Femto is exercising his magic over the child and thus taking possession of their body. But it is the same body.
Ah, okay. That's that feels right. Very astute, man.
Oh man, I can't. Ever since you told me about that transformation, how immense it would have been if Griffith has actually somehow been that Moonlight Child. I know it's such a far stretch, but just imagining what those implications are, because it's just like in chapter 364, what I thought was so immense, just seeing Guts being able to have a father-son moment with the child, just because of everything he went through, growing up with Gambino, and it was just amazing before that he was able to form any relationships with anyone before he met Griffith. And then we see this moment in 364 where he's finally able to get over that trauma. First he had to get over the trauma of being able to just let anyone touch him or being friends with anyone. That happened. Then he's able to open up and fall in love with Casca. But then the next big thing was to see if he could actually embrace a life of a child, just because of because it's understandable. People who've gone through trauma as children, they are unable to connect with other children, or they find themselves hating children for. It's a dark subject, yeah. But So it was just incredible to be able to see him make that connection. And then if that was all Griffith all along, like, oh my, I can't even. I
Well, yeah,
can't even.
to go back to what Andy was saying, like, I hope he's right, and I love the take that, you know, Moonlight Child is still its own entity. It's not 100% Griffith, but just at times he possesses the Moonlight Child. And I'm really hoping that's true because, yeah, I don't know, with all the implications of it makes me want to almost go back and reread the whole series, and it can kind of recontextualize or it changes the whole dynamic of any time Moonchild shows up. Now I'm like, okay, is Griffith like spying on them right now, or
No. But it's hinted
okay,
that Zod will follow the Moonlight Child around. So whenever the Moonlight Child is there, Zod is like hiding behind a rock or something, and he's like literally right there.
yeah. Well, when did the Moonlight Child and Zod come one after another?
No. Okay. So this is an interesting theory, and
Okay.
it works out, which is that so in like I think it's in like the 200 chapters or something like that. It's they're out on the beach and there's all the crocodile demons that are attacking, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And okay, and the Moonlight Child is there, and there's one scene where like Guts looks out at the rocks, and there's like a weird silhouette, and there's fans who are like, oh no, that's a wing, and that's the profile of Zod because
Ooh.
he's actually right there. And Miura was trying to hint that he's right there without saying it, just being very subtle about it. And that's the hint that all this stuff with the Moonlight Child is true, and that's the only hint he gives. And I'm
And
like,
oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
oh no, I was done. You can go.
I was just gonna say, like, and it kind of goes into another thing that I found out when I was rereading. Like, it was also in the 200s in a different area, but it was right before it was right before that really big battle where Guts and Zod actually have to team up against Ganishka, who was
Exactly.
yeah. So it was that whole thing, where it was prophesized, that. Zod and Zod would have to either work with Guts or not with him. But like it was described as it being a counterpart, which is really interesting. That it brings in this whole connection that Guts has a deeper connection with Zod than that we originally thought, and that kind of lends itself to what you were just saying, Andy, as well. Like it just furthers that connection. Like why would Zod be trailing this Moonlight Child, and if that's the case, that would also explain why they would be counterparts.
Oh, and in that in a literary sense, Guts is guarding Casca, and Zod is guarding Guts's son.
Yeah.
Oh man, I didn't. Yeah, I. That's a whole nother angle on there that I didn't think about. Because yeah, I just didn't put Zod and the child linked together. I've just always had Zod and Griffith linked together in my brain. But speaking of Griffith, one thing I loved about the newest chapters too was just as much as we would love to see Guts and Griffith just go at it. I love the I want to say symbolism, but it's just these chapters made it feel like Griffith is literally still just so untouchable compared to Guts that all of even his Dragon Slayer sword, which is supposed to work on ethereal beings because he's killed so much demons with it, still is just slicing right through the mirage or whatever the spiritual version of Griffith that has manifested here. Which kind of makes me wonder, like, so the Moonchild is it a physical being or is it more of a spiritual being that's manifesting itself on the moonlight?
100% physical being.
Okay. So at this point, when Griffith's just kind of hamming away at this mirage, we don't know what's going on or happened to the physical form of the Moonchild.
No, that is his physical form.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So the sword just still is just going through him.
Okay, here. We don't know. This is still a very vague thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But okay, the God Hand is so powerful that they can only enter the physical realm during an eclipse.
Right.
Right.
The only other times you see them interacting with Guts, like the time Slan, is Slan was possessing a bunch of like troll corpses.
Mm-hmm.
That's how she was able to like become physically there in the world. And right now, Griffith has the Moonlight Child, which can go in between the physical realm and not the physical realm. And that's how he can still have sex with Charlotte, for example.
Okay.
But he's so powerful that he can't even be, if he wills it, he can't even be harmed by physical weapons. And the fact that Dragon Slayer was able to cut through a single hair signifies that Guts is actually capable of hurting him, which is like, it shouldn't even be possible for anything to touch him.
In this chapter, did we see it going through a hair?
Yeah, one little thing, it goes through a hair, and it's like, wow, oh my god.
Wait, where? I didn't see that myself.
I think
Yeah,
here
I
I
missed
will
that
find
one
it
too.
for you.
I missed that one too. I'm on 366 right now, just
Yeah,
kind of scrolling
366.
through. Because yeah, everything I was seeing or everything I was gleaming was just the sword just going right through, not having any effect. But it seems after the couple pages of just Guts going ham and us getting a bunch of broken panels all over the place of the attacks, then it kind of cuts to Griffith's ethereal version of himself becoming less pronounced. So that kind of lends to that idea of, Guts's attacks are having an effect, but I wasn't seeing.
Wait, where? I'm like delving through every page.
Panel 3, page 3 of 366. You
Thank
can
you.
see
Really?
Guts looking at this sword after he cuts through Griffith the first time. Yeah.
Okay, I see, I think I see it, but it
No,
almost.
So that
there
line
it
in
is.
the air?
It looks like a lightning bolt. There it is.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that.
I just saw it at the same time. I was like, oh, I thought that was lightning, but
Yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
you're supposed to think it's lightning, but it's not. I'm sorry.
oh
Yeah,
no,
it
you're
was
fine.
fake. I'm an idiot.
Yeah, I don't know. I almost feel like if he did actually do the damage and stuff like that, it would feel like they would focus on it more. Or do you feel
He's
like they?
only just powerful enough to even do that. And keep in mind, all of chapter 366 takes place over like 2 seconds.
Yeah. Oh man. So I mean I still feel like my stance is still there. I feel like this chapter just really shows how far the divide still is between Guts and Griffith. But of course, I mean, we still need to have Guts figure out a way to even get to the Dark Realm if that's where we're going with this. I mean, even before 365 and 366 happened, we were unsure if we were going to be getting any more Berserk. And I loved the idea that we were even toying with the idea of Guts letting go of his anger and
Yeah. Oh, I want to talk about that.
yeah, of course. Just like and finding happiness in this new family he's acquired and letting go of his path of revenge. Well, then Griffith decides to just manifest himself right in front of him, and that tests that theory pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, like, if I was, reading too much into it, but I just remember when, they first get on Skellig or Elfheim, however you want to say the island or the place. But when, like, he was told to, think back, when Guts was told, to talk about Griffith, there was just that one comment, where he's like, I thought at this point I would have, been able to move on from Griffith. And, like, so even though in that moment, he's saying that he's still getting feelings, obviously, while talking about him, it was just like the fact that he was able to even hope or believe that at any time he would be able to move beyond his obsession of Griffith. Like, that was just, like, it's just so hard to believe it. Like, even in all of, like, the wildest theories, like, I would never have imagined, like, Guts ever reaching a point where he could even want to or think that's even possible. And then also too, there was like that whole thing about with the Skull Knight saying that his journey was almost over. It was like, oh my God, is he actually a lot closer to moving beyond his hatred of Griffith? And then of course Griffith comes and it's like in any instance where someone is trying to move away from something. That's why you always have to actually physically remove yourself from all the people that could make you relapse, for example. And this is just one of those moments where he could have most likely have pushed or gone beyond Griffith, just moved on somehow. But actually seeing him or being put back in a situation where he has to confront him kind of makes that all go down the drain. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the things from these new chapters that I was definitely getting, was that just how far, like, it just threw him back into the pits of hatred and need for revenge. And then it also just makes it so much scarier because we've now known that Guts is on like the same path as the Skull Knight himself. So it's like, oh well, no, here we go. He still has the hatred inside of him. He's screwed. Type of deal. So,
yeah, it was almost like they had a happy ending on track, and then they're like, yeah, we'll keep it going. We can we can go ahead and keep on. We'll eventually get to Guts and Griffith's resolution. But
if I can make a comment about that in
Please.
terms of the structure of Berserk and how this new phase is like just amazing. Okay, so like I think that in fact this is exactly what Miura Sensei planned. He was like, okay, so we're gonna get to this point where everyone's like, oh my God, I just want, like, we've been on the boat forever. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, I just want to, and like, first of all, he's like doing a great job while all that's happening, but nobody cares because it's not Guts versus Griffith. And he's like, no, I'm going to give you 10, make that 20 years where you're just begging me to fucking, like, to go back. You're begging me to go back to Guts versus Griffith. But that's not the point of Berserk. The point of Berserk is that the world is a bad place and we need to sort of be good to each other. Okay, fine. We're going to get down to that point. And then right as he's about to be like, but what I really wanted to do was this, he dies.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Think about that.
Yeah.
And that's like at least like what I loved about his assistants, at least, because I mean, like I believe, I mean, that's where I think where Guts is going to end up in the end, is moving on. And that's one of the reasons why his assistants, like there might have always been the idea that they were going to continue the series, but if that were going to be the conclusion, that was what they believe that Kentaro Miura wanted in the end. So they were trying to conclude it the best way they could.
Yeah,
I mean, he had that whole thing laid out, didn't he?
Oh yeah. Like, but they just had to like rewrite the chapter, like just in like the dialogue at the end, creating like that more that feeling of finality. Yeah.
Which,
I mean, that is a good point. That's an interesting point too.
Yeah, I love that idea that the final chapter he worked on is the one where the Moonchild turns into Griffith at the end. So it's exact. I love your point, Andy. Where it's like, okay, we're off the boat. We're moving towards peacetime, which I is the typical manga thing to do. Is okay, everything seems really nice, and then something really bad happens. But with this, it's like, oh, we could, everyone has kind of a happy life. And, oh, by the way, I'm going to tease the thing you guys have wanted for 20 years at the very end. And you're like, no, oh my God. And yeah, that being his very final chapter is just, Miura, you genius. You genius.
Well, but like, and this is the interesting thing about the continuation, just to jump off what Steven's saying, is that like, so he gets to that point and his assistants have to pick it up. And what do his assistants do? His assistants say two things. Okay, the reason why Miura Sensei didn't go past this point is because he's such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
That there's like, this is all we can do. Like, all he could do was get to the point that he got to, because his own perfectionism would not allow him to get past that point. So what they're saying is, okay, we're not Miura Sensei. We're not going to be able to do that. But we know his sense of visual storytelling and the way that his narratives work to the point where we can do a pretty good substitute for it. And that's all they did. And I am unbelievably happy with how that came out.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because, as I said earlier in the podcast, I just caught up on the last chapters and the new ones, and I'm very happy with the way the new chapters look and have come out. Like,
oh yeah,
I mean, I can't say that there was as many panels. There was definitely a couple panels where I was just like, "Ooh, man, I'm gonna stare at that for a while. That looks great." Compared to, Kentaro's work, where every once in a while there's just a panel where you're just like, all right, that's my new wallpaper. I'm going to stare at that for 2 years now. And I don't feel like there's a couple panels that I feel like could have definitely had that, but they're still great looking and absolutely serviceable. But it definitely, it's almost like it's missing an extra thing of shading, or it's just missing that extra little thing, but it still looks fantastic. Like,
it takes them years and years to get that good. It takes them years of it. Oh.
Yeah, like I really like the final page panel where we got Zod plopping right in front of Guts. And I think probably my other favorite panel that I loved was I'm kind of going back to, because 365 was so short and 366 is where all the action started. But I think it was 365 actually, of Guts charging towards Griffith. That might have also been the final panel.
That panel. Yeah.
That one also looked great, but there's just a couple little things. It just feels a little bit different. But again, I'm not complaining.
I mean, it's one of those things. Like, I would have been fine if like it was almost half of this. Like, this basically transcended anything that I would have thought. Like, I mean, especially like after the debacle of all of the movies and the latest seasons. Like, they have really, like, again, there's some, like you were saying, there's something missing, but at the same time, you are still getting
Berserk.
it.
Yeah,
like,
it's still Berserk.
This is. I couldn't have asked for anything. Like, in my wildest dreams, it wouldn't have turned out like this.
I think that, like, and this is something that I'm a little bit. I mean, and keep in mind, it takes about 10 years for a mangaka to get like good. And I remember when I was in high school or something, asking, okay, who's the best comic artist in the world? A friend of mine who was very, very into comics, and he said, Kentaro Miura, the guy who does Berserk. And I'm like, what? Because I hadn't read it. And, I'm glad I didn't read it when I was a kid, because that probably would have haunted me for a very long time. But like, so I said, and he said to me, and I'll never forget it. He said, no, like, there's nobody in the world who is better at like art than this guy. Like, he might be one of the best artists of all time. And I was like, well, like, what do you mean? It's like, no, you just have to like watch him like do it. It's unbelievable. And when I finally went through it in preparation for writing about it, I think that was back at the beginning of 2021. I remember being like, no, there's nobody who gets the medium of comics better than this guy, because his mind is able to like grasp. There's like a camera in his head that is so good at grasping the weight of a character that has like superpowers and like the dimensions of like a monster that only he could create. And keep in mind, he wasn't always like, there's a few chapters which are not that inventive. There's a time or two where he doesn't quite get where he needs to. It took him up until, I would say, basically the Eclipse for him to even have the style that we associate with him. But like, that's all part of what goes into making him the great artist. And Studio Gaga is going to have to do the same thing now. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I mean, these editors and assistants he's had, do we know if they've been with him for a really long time, or I'm not sure how a lot of these teams work, but I know in the sense of like other series like One Piece or Naruto and that kind of thing, they kind of cycle through editors and whatnot. But I did read that the guy who's kind of taking charge of these new chapters was one of Mira's closest friends, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Kyoji. Yeah, his childhood lifelong friend. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's reassuring.
I think I've seen Studio Gaga was established in 2018. I think I know that they've been with him for at least 4 years. They've probably been with him longer. I can't find anything as to how long they've been around.
Well, I would especially say after reading 365 and 366 that they've done it. I know, as you've said, it takes a long time to get to, those masterful mangaka levels, but I'm very happy with their talent here. Even if it is a little bit different, it still feels like Berserk, and that is to me the most important thing.
Griffith is still beautiful. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's definitely the panel I'm going to be using for a thumbnail is Griffith's eye opening up towards him after the swing didn't go through, and I'm like, oh god, it's just so pretty. Yeah, go ahead, man.
No, I don't want to. I don't know. I don't want to change the subject or anything. But something that I was always interested in like where things were possibly going, like after 364. And I didn't realize it the first time until, reading through it again, that there was actually one point, and I forget who it was exactly. It was the, that's right, the girl who became a Muro. I forgot her name.
Oh, the mermaid girl?
Yeah, the mermaid, yeah. Okay. So she was saying that those who go on Skellig Island, beware. You don't want to have an extended stay there because time travels differently. Mm-hmm. And where it's like if you stay there for a long period of time, you could leave and the world will be a completely different place. Like something that I was always interested in, just because those earlier chapters where we first see Falconia and we actually see Griffith being the type of leader that you kind of want in today's world, just despite all the horrible things he's done, but basically thinking all these things we can't be treating immigrants this way, or we can't be treating orphans this way. Everyone has to have a fair share. I was always interested, I was wondering if this Griffith thing didn't happen, was if they stayed on Skellig Island for too long, that if they left the island and then all of a sudden it's a fast forward almost where that time has shifted and Griffith has actually almost reclaimed all of the world, and we could actually see Griffith being the amazing
accomplished his goal.
Yeah, but what is so crazy because it's those things Griffith has done horrific acts just a horrible person just to become femto
Mm-hmm. Oh, of course.
But then it's do the ends justify the means type of thing, but just exemplified, because it's he commits these atrocities but then he creates a perfect world. I'm wondering if that's where we're going, but I don't know now because it seems because they have
no it could still happen.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, Miura is very focused on this idea. He's a huge moralist. He's arguably the biggest moralist that we have at the moment. In terms of because moralism is not in vogue right now. In terms of how, everyone's sort of oh no, it's all fine. Game of Thrones was all about that. Well, that's how it came out. And we wonder why these things don't happen across our political landscape. But that was never Miura's style. Miura's always been no, all of your actions matter. Every single thing you do, be it good or evil, is going to have those consequences out on the world. So, when Steve brings this up, what he's saying, I think that that's a pretty good like way of looking at the logical conclusions of what Kentaro Miura would have done were he alive.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Well, I think that the main reason that just works, or that's why Berserk stands out. So one of the reasons Berserk stands out so well. Well, and I have quite a few other buddies who are huge into the series as well, and one of my buddies' favorite aspects of it is the whole narrative structure of Guts as the struggler. It's just everyone's actions have consequences, and especially after Griffith's choice and starting the eclipse, and all hell pretty much breaking loose on the earth. It's just those consequences are having those actions, and the whole journey with Guts is just the world's not kind, but you have to keep on going, is kind of the main message I've always gotten from Berserk. Is no matter how dire things seem to be, you got to struggle with it, and those struggles develop you, and we're all incredibly interested to see where those strugglers bring Guts. And yeah, as I've liked your connection to addiction, Stephen, with this is Guts was going clean. He was shedding his hatred, and then he had a relapse in these new chapters, and with Griffith showing back up. And yeah, I just feel like the series, it's kind of the moment in the series where this is going to be their new call to action. This is. I don't see everything resolving here on Elfhelm, obviously. This is going to trigger the next thing that they need to go do. But to kind of go back also to what you're talking about, how time dilation is weird here on Elfhelm and stuff like that. I loved the idea that, while they're here and enjoying themselves, Griffith has already won, essentially.
Yeah.
And we got that clip on a couple chapters ago even, and that was one thing I loved about it too. I was just like, oh, Berserk, new chapter, okay, this is so much politics and dialogue. This isn't necessarily what I wanted with Berserk, but it was Griffith saying they needed to focus on education, they needed to focus on making sure everybody has their fair share, and exactly what you're saying. You're like, oh man, is Griffith actually a great leader? Was everything worth getting here to? But at this point, we don't really know, or at least I'm not sure what Griffith's main goal is, other than, to essentially be the king of everything, because he's kind of already accomplished his goal. And I'm almost wondering if it's going to go back to, oh, well, I still have Casca and Guts, who are part of the tribute to make me Femto. I know he's not thinking this, but this is just me kind of talking out off my brain. I'm wondering if he's still kind of if his powers are incomplete, because he.
Yes. Oh. That's actually where I was just going to go. Yeah. That's something that I've always wondered. I mean, because there was the sacrifice, and they were part of the sacrifice, and they have not been sacrificed yet. And it's arguably the most two important, people. To be the sacrifice, but keep going.
Well, yeah, just at this point we don't really know necessarily what Griffith's thought process is, because the last we saw him, he was looking at the moonlight and then he just magically disappeared, and I guess we're to assume this was the exact next step of his journey.
Let me interject, because I think I know what's going to happen here.
Oh, do it. Go.
Okay. So whenever you see, for instance, in the battle with Grishna, or whatever the hell his name is.
Oh, yeah, Ganesha.
Ganesha. Yeah, I always get that wrong. He can't do it alone as Griffith. So he turns into Femto, and even then it doesn't really turn out to, be enough. Okay. You never really get the feeling that Griffith, that's anything more than a mask. Do you understand? Whenever he's doing all that stuff, you never really get the feeling in the art that there's anything more beyond Griffith as he always was. which is like, even though this stuff sort of makes me feel bad, I kind of want power, so I'm just going to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And even when he has the opportunity to do it as a man, i.e., lead an army and like fight with a sword, he doesn't do that. He turns into like a giant, horrible reptile monster with like an oblique sexual like motif on it. Okay. So what that's hinting at is there's going to be a point where Griffith is going to have the opportunity to say, you know what, this was what I wanted. All I really wanted was for people to be happy and for there not to be war. And instead, he's going to have another eclipse, which is going to be every single person in the world. And
I like that.
Because he can't help himself.
Oh, I like that a lot.
Well, because it's something that I think that they've alluded to in the series was the God Hand is more of a representation of a higher power, right? Because I've always thought that possibly if Guts was going to forgive his journey for revenge, that we would follow Griffith for a little bit, and he would, through deception and do what Griffith does best, also take out the God Hand himself. So then he could rise to the top and be the number one in all of existence, essentially. But it's been kind of teased that there might be something above the God Hand, like actual, like this series version of God, I guess.
Yeah, there's that chapter where he appears.
Sorry, Andy, what was it?
There's a chapter where he appears. It was taken out of the running because Miura thought that it like gave too much away. But there's a chapter where the Dark God appears, and he's just like, I'm an empty void, and I want to consume, and that's what I do.
Okay. So yeah, I wonder if that is Griffith's goal, is to become that or take that down. I'm not 100% sure. But that's something that as soon as Griffith showed up here, as much as I am excited to watch them, duke it out and Guts to feel better and all that stuff, that he deserves the happy ending, I want them to have a conversation. I was so anxious for Griffith just to say at least a couple words of like, good to see you, good to see you're still strong, you've gotten weaker, just anything. And it's unclear at this point, but the chapter, I'm not sure if Griffith is disappearing and then Zod just shows up and now we're going to have another confrontation with Zod. But yeah, it's just why is Griffith here?
Well, I think like it's just basically he's there just to interrupt everything, like just to like again like to throw that wrench into Guts's evolution or movement. Yeah, like it's like I would have loved happiness. Yeah, like I wanted that too, but I'm kind of glad that it didn't happen because it just feeds into wanting more. Yeah. Like you don't want everything all at once type of deal. But yeah, no, I completely get what you're saying because, like, I've been saying on other things, like, I love the fighting and fighting manga, but I love the, when they actually have to talk. So I can definitely, agree with you there.
Well, especially with Guts and Griffith, like,
yeah.
I mean, they're just like arguably the two biggest figures in all of manga for a lot of people, and that's I mean, that interaction is something that we've wanted to see since I mean, I'd say the Eclipse, but they sort of had a couple words on their fight on the hill after the Eclipse, but even that was cut short. So,
well, to be fair, I think that what this chapter proves is that that's not what Guts is going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because Guts looks at Griffith and said, that's an evil man. He's a threat to everyone and everything, and he needs to be destroyed. And hate to say it, but he's ultimately right. Mm-hmm. Griffith is a monster. Griffith is one of the most evil characters in fiction, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of evil people.
Yeah, we've read a lot of stories between all of us, and yeah, I think we could all agree on that.
And wait, were you still going, Andy? Do you have more to say, or?
Well, I was just going to say that the one thing that I enjoy about the new chapters is, so the reason we want them to talk is because Berserk has a very naturalistic feel to it. Yeah. There's always like this involvement with the emotions of the characters and the surroundings, and the way that magic sort of interacts with its surroundings in a realistic way, you know. And I think that that's part of the charm of the series. But at the core, it defies this hopeful expectation that we have by reminding us that no, this is good versus evil here, and this is the stakes are very, very high. But that's go on.
No, I completely agree, and it's like what I was just gonna say is just because it keeps popping in my mind, and I think about it even when I'm not writing or reading manga. Is like just during the eclipse when they were meeting with the God Hand. I don't know why I remembered it just now, but it just kind of just goes to the whole thing, like, do the ends justify the means type of deal. Just because, like, even though the eclipse like was a horrible thing and it was completely horrible, especially what happened to Casca, there was always that point where it's like, you were already doing this anyway, Griffith. Like, by creating an army, you were leading them to their death, and you were basically like the whole image of building the bridge of corpses to your kingdom in the sky type of deal. Yeah, I know. Like, I love that imagery. Like, I love Kentaro. Yeah, just building, that bridge to the sky, and it's like what he was already doing that almost except really, I mean, the whole thing with Casca. I mean, that just pushes everything to the limit there. But it's like he was already doing it into some respects, if you get where I'm going.
Oh, he was always the most evil person in the world. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it was just especially the eclipse proved that he's willing to sacrifice all of his closest people, for his own goal. But that's kind of brought us to this point of, all right, well, you've sacrificed about everybody you cared about, and you have achieved the kingdom that you wanted. It is as far as we know, the most powerful, most advanced kingdom in all the world. And especially, we don't necessarily know how much time has passed in the outside world at this point, since we've been focused on Elfhelm for the last dozen or so chapters.
Because, immediately we go into it, and it's like a totally functioning, worthwhile kingdom. I think that it's hinted that not much time has passed because, what's his name? That old priest is still alive, I think. But, everything seems to be, somewhat accelerated to what you would think it was immediately after the last time you saw them, which was, what's his name? The last time you saw the kingdom was when Rickard escaped.
Oh yeah, that was in the.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because my favorite moment in Berserk, probably still to this day, is Rickard slapping Griffith.
Yeah,
it's still one of my favorite bits. But so I mean, after that, I wanted to bring it up. I was going to do it off recording because it wasn't necessarily new Berserk, but this is our first Berserk podcast. Let's talk about all of it.
You're opening Pandora's box.
Yeah, right. 4 hours later. So did Griffith send people to kill Rickard after that? Because I know that Rickard had to escape the city.
It was implied, we don't really know for sure. That's what everyone was thinking. How else would this have all happened?
I think yes. I think he did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because he did get disrespected. That slap. But I do like that whole thing though. It's now kind of destroyed my theory, but Rickard is almost becoming just like Guts. In that, and there was actually that moment too where Rickard makes that connection. It's not some metaphor or anything. Like he goes outright and says it, that he's basically going on a journey just like Guts did, and he has someone to protect. Except instead of Casca, it's Erica, and it's like almost there is a second Guts being formed from this whole deal, and I always like that imagery. Say that again.
I said, I hope not. Guts is miserable.
Yeah. That's kind of it almost makes me wonder if that is their chance to tell Guts' story through the happy ending angle through Rickard. But then again, I mean, he went to Griffith. He got his revenge. He got his anger out on him by slapping Griffith's face, a demigod's face, and then surviving to tell about it. And I would like to think he went back to his little home with Erica, and they're going to live happily ever after. Or he's going to show up in the next chapter and tell everybody about Falcona and all that stuff.
I just realized something, which is that, and I've been thinking about this, Stephen. I think that they can't really do a time skip easily unless, and this is possibly what was going to happen. So remember, at the beginning of Fantasia, all of the world is now being invaded by all the the Dark World stuff with all the magic and the dragons, and it's all just coming in out of nowhere. Like, it's all visible. So, that's going to be creating, and has been demonstrated to be creating, havoc, all over the world as all these monsters are attacking all these human settlements. So, what I was thinking is a time skip of, say, 50 to 70 years, or even just a few decades, that's going to, really change the world. Because there's going to be so much magic that's hinted to be about to completely destroy the world anyway. I don't know. What do you think about it?
No, yeah.
Yeah, Steven.
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, there's also... Because I was wondering that too, and that's why I'm almost I love the idea, and that's the only way that they can get to Elfhelm. But, that whole world twin tree, that whole deal, where it's that way where you can travel anywhere basically by going through the sky, that is the only that already expedited Griffith's control over the whole entire world and even fighting back all the monsters. But I could be completely wrong. I've just always been focusing on that world twin tree just for that very reason. It's it was already going to be a really big effort or just to take over the world, obviously, but with the world twin tree, that kind of makes it a little bit easier, if that makes any sense.
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, if he established a fast travel in the story, but my take on if we did a little bit of a time skip, if we leave Elfhelm and find out that things have progressed a little bit, the whole demons or the Dark World taking over is just giving Griffith's forces the opening to come in and save the day, to fully get everyone in the world to think Griffith is the Messiah and the...
Yeah.
And there was a scene where that does happen already.
Yeah, so I almost think that is, what Griffith's aim was, but on a global scale over time. Which just adds more mystery for him showing up here. It's a mystery for me that just formed when we finished the chapter that happened, I don't know, I feel like it was half a dozen or a dozen chapters ago, of Griffith at his window and then disappearing. And you're just okay, what's going through your brain right now? Does he feel like he needs to possibly complete the sacrifice before he can conquer the world? We don't know. So the mystery continues and deepens.
Well, I mean, one of the things that's cool about Berserk is it's one of these, the way that the series keeps on progressing and getting more and more insane and everything getting crazier and crazier. It's by the end of it, there's just going to be dragons swooping overhead as Guts is like barely alive, like battling Griffith and Zod at the same time. You know, like just like everything's gone to complete hell. There's goblins everywhere. You know.
Well, you bring up a great point, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off.
No,
Just
no, you got it.
okay. It's just as somebody who, you know what, I've heard a lot about this Berserk manga. I think I'm going to pick it up and read it. And then you pick it up, and it's the Dark Sword or the Black Swordsman arc. Has that been established as like still canon? Like, is there still a moment where Guts confronts the God Hand and he's hurt and his elf friend heals his arm just enough to get one final swing against Griffith, and then the chapter ends? Is that all? Did that all still happen? Are we all going to that, or? And then we go into the Golden Age arc, obviously. So I guess as somebody who's a Berserk fan but is unsure of the what's canon nowadays, do we still have all that to look forward to? Or
consider it all canon, so
okay.
that still did happen. It's just like it's a little bit ridiculous in the it's the more you think about it, the more ridiculous it is. But I guess the idea is that that particular apostle had some ability to enter the dark world, and that's where all that took place. And it's just for some strange reason, Guts and his daughter were also there, even though they shouldn't have been.
Because there's that, and to go back, I hadn't really considered, but your point of Griffith, whenever he dons the Femto armor, we haven't really seen, that give him a huge power boost, or that it so far just feels like it's a mask. But as somebody who's watched the highly loved and beloved 3D animated Golden Age arc movies, they kind of they changed the ending of the eclipse a little bit. They actually show Skull Knight like bursting through the seal and coming to save Guts and Casca, and we see like the newly awakened Griffith use some like gravity powers against him, and they end up missing entirely and destroying like swells of demons behind him. And it's incredibly intimidating and cool, but we've never seen any of that like in the manga actually, I'm not sure if it's in. It's been so long since I've read the Eclipse chapters that I'm not sure if that's how it was or if they added that in the movie. But
No. I mean, he's got some crazy shit he can do, Griffith.
yeah.
You are correct that like when he hasn't been demonstrated doing it on the physical plane since that time. But like in fact he like what happens at the end of what the heck is his name again? What's his name? Gosh.
The Kushin King.
Yeah, so
Ganesha. Yeah.
Ganesha, yeah. Oh god. Well, yeah. That's such a brutal arc. Oh my god. What a brutal, horrifying series. I hope that they maintain that because like that, I mean, I'm not saying that that's something we should all aspire to, but it really does dissuade you from ever wanting to do anything bad ever to anyone.
You mean the Griffith versus Ganishka
bit?
Or okay. Because we were talking about Eclipse, and then you said that. I'm like, well, yeah,
because that's the only other time he's become Femto in the physical world.
But even then, didn't he use that just to like fly on top of the head? And then Skull Knight actually showed up and used the Balet sword, and that seemed to be the thing that did like the most damage.
Yeah, but he was still able to like deflect it and put it. You remember it was that.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the way I've been taking it is that, Griffith he wanted to become Femto just so he could attain his dream, but I think he still wants to do it as a human type of deal. That's kind of how I saw it. Why he's capturing the world now, like with the new, the Hawks. Like he's created a whole new army that's basically an emulation of the last one during the Golden Age. Like he's trying to relive that glory. I can do this as a man, not as a demon. type of
Yeah,
deal.
but when push comes to shove, he's always going to go back and use his demonic powers. And like that was sort of the buildup of the series, and this is another tragedy of Miura's death, is that like no, he probably did have some idea of what the exhibition of Griffith's power was really going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't, and like it's possible that he can actually do that in the physical realm. He's just like not, he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah. And as you brought up earlier too, the God Hand are supposed to be, so ridiculously magical and powerful that the physical world shouldn't even be able to support their full beings. So it's one of those things where even if Guts does figure out a way to get into that realm, I just feel like Guts still has such a long way to go before he could even stand toe to toe against stuff like that.
Yeah, one thing that fans have been noting is that Guts is also like really not like powerful right now. He is not at 100% because he's so exhausted from all the battles, especially against the Sea God.
Yeah,
and like
he almost that was like the one time where I actually thought he would lose in the entire manga. Like that was like where I felt the most helpless. But go on.
To go into sorry, Andy, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, and Jason was going to say.
Oh, well, it's just as somebody who just read 364, 365, and 366, exactly what you're going into is like Guts is not at a great place right now. I mean, even while training for the first time ever, I feel like we've seen Guts training and he loses grip of his sword, which was kind of like shocking for me. I was just like, whoa, is this the weakest? Is this like the most shaken we have seen him, or is he? It almost lent into the idea of, maybe he is done fighting. Maybe he, he literally tossed the sword aside, not on purpose, but he did. And then a couple pages later, Griffith shows up, so that changes things. I don't know. I still get so excited just thinking that we have a regular Berserk ahead of us. I do imagine. It's, as somebody who's gotten into Berserk within the last few years, I've never had a consistent Berserk coming out. So it's what a time to be alive for a manga fan, guys.
I'm actually curious, like before like going into the closers, I don't know if we want to talk about it on the podcast, but I'm interested in hearing like how you guys first got into Berserk. I don't know if that's going too far, but I'm kind of interested in.
No, absolutely. I feel like this is our first podcast. We might as well celebrate Berserk. But before we get into that, any other thoughts you guys wanted to say about the last couple chapters of Berserk that we've gotten so far?
I think it's funny that like, there is something like sort of in an absurdist way very funny about the idea that the chapter before Guts and Griffith are about to go at it one more time, and we get to see, the stupid, annoying, taunting Griffith versus the angry, like bestial, Guts. Like Griffith, like just that thing that we wanted so much. Miura literally died.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. You brought that up earlier. It's just like you guys have wanted this all along. In the final chapter of his drawing days, he drops it.
There's something beautiful about it. There's something actually beautiful about it, because he got that far and he took the character like on the journey that he knew that he needed to take him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets to that point where it's like, okay, but what you really want is you want me to fucking finish the story. Okay, here we go.
No,
absolutely.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean, because especially, and I'm just so excited just to see, like, because Casca's back. Like, I still can't get over that fact.
No, it's all he did that all on purpose. Yeah. He did that literally. He was like, "Oh, and you want Casca back? Fine." I was so tired of like this situation. I needed to get you to the point where like you couldn't bear another chapter where she was like this. There, I've given her back.
Well,
But
he knew he was dying too. He
Yeah.
knew he was dying, so like he's probably like putting all his ducks in a row.
Well, no,
Um,
but the thing is, he had suffered with heart problems for years and years.
yeah.
So the thing is, what I think is amazing is that he didn't do that. He literally said, "No, I would rather just drag it out."
Yeah.
well, it's instead of, I mean, as you said, he's a perfectionist. So I almost feel
Yeah.
like he didn't want to, fast forward everything and shoehorn everything that he needed to get into because he felt like his time was low. Because of his perfectionist tendencies, he still couldn't bear the idea of changing or changing the course of Berserk's story. He
Oh
still
yeah. Oh
I
yeah.
would argue that he did, like, he made it worse because of the fan reaction to it.
Oh, really?
That is, yeah. I mean, I know some mangaka are very renowned for doing that. Like yeah, there's a lot of backlash, and they're like, okay, you know what, you want this? Well, I'm gonna go this way. Or yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what a baller! Oh my god,
He's a goat, man. He's the goat.
he is the goat.
Well, yeah, and I really don't think we're going to be getting anyone close to that sort of thing anytime soon. But we can all hope that Mira's legacy and his talents will inspire the next generation, and someday we may get a story that takes that learned everything that they knew from Berserk to tell a new story. So someday we may, but let's finish Berserk first, and let's oh boy, let's see where this story goes from there on. But if you guys are ready, great question, Stephen, earlier on how we all got started with Berserk. It was one of those things where, I mean, I've been into manga and comics since I was like a preteen, and it's one of those things where as I started reading Berserk, you start to remember, like, I had probably half a dozen people over the course of 10 years telling me about Berserk. Like, there was an old family friend that I had met, like, in California, and I was telling him I was into comics. He's like, "Oh, you should check out Berserk, but you might want to wait a couple years. It's pretty dark." I was just like, "Oh, okay." And sure enough, like, it was probably 6 years later, one of my best friends was telling me to check it out too, and I was like, "Okay, I'll start getting into this." And I actually started by watching the Golden Age arc films, which a lot of people, throw a lot of hate towards, but they got me into it, and I still think that
The
they're,
voice acting is phenomenal.
yes,
English voice
both English and
phenomenal.
dubbed. It's one of those English dubs that still, like, holds up very well. I used to be somebody who, I mean, back in the days of just Toonami and being into Dragon Ball Z and stuff, I was very adamant on, like, oh, no, the dubs, I can't stand, like, Dragon Ball Z Japanese voice actors. It just felt so squeaky at the time. But then Dragon Ball Super came out, and they took way too long to adapt it to English. And I just, I watched a couple episodes, and it didn't bother me anymore. But Berserk
yeah,
is
I mean,
not that. Like, I've watched it in English and both Japanese, and I'm just like, geez, especially like the sorry to interrupt you, or sorry, Steven, but I was just gonna get this out. In the '90s anime, it's all available to watch for free on YouTube. Last I checked. And when Griffith is imprisoned and being tortured for years, the English voice acting for that anime, he has this whole Shakespearean, like, monologue that he's just, like, talking to himself in his head after years of torture, and he sees, like, I think the God hand reach out to him or something along those lines, and it's just his breakdown of his psyche and stuff, and it's just the English voice acting, just, you hear the sorrow, you hear the tears almost coming out of the dude's face. Like, it's, oh man, so good.
Yeah, well, and also too, I mean, defending the new movies. to some degree. There was actually one scene that was not in the original 97 90s anime that is still it's still with me. It's when they were it was after they've all been accepted as nobles, and there was that scene where they're all supposed to be dancing, and it was right before that moment where Griffith does that.
Titanic scene.
The massive the speech to Charlotte, about what he views a friend as. So that same party, but when Guts is dancing with Casca, there's a scene where they're twirling around and just laughing. That really struck me, just because their relationship, it definitely evolves in the manga and in the anime, but that one scene, like right before they, really get together, like that really captured like who they are beyond friends. Like it was just that moment where you're seeing it tip in the other direction, and that I don't know, that scene will just always resonate with me. And it wasn't in the regular anime at all.
It was almost the first time like Casca like let her guard down and just like enjoyed herself. So I can see how that resonated.
Yeah, it was just, oh man.
Going back to something we were talking about earlier too, Andy, you were saying like we can't have fine. Casca's got her psyche back, but Guts and Casca can't interact.
Oh, I love that. Oh my god, that is just insane. Oh my god,
it's like, I'll give you something you guys have wanted, but at the same time, I'm not going to give you everything you wanted with that. Like,
I'm almost glad that's the case.
Be realistic at all? Like,
it's not unrealistic. It's just again going into the
her multiple times.
Yeah. Well, he almost assaulted her too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is complete. It's not out of left field or anything like that. It absolutely makes sense, but it's just fans have wanted, Casca's psyche to come back and her and Guts to be able to live happily ever after. But I just love that, like, okay, I'll make the cake, but you can't eat it yet.
Yeah.
You don't get the cake
I
too.
I completely agree. Yeah.
So, that's how I got into Berserk. And then after I watched all three of the movies, and I think I started reading it after that. And then the new amazing animes came out, and I did watch those. Don't fully recommend it. The second season felt a little better than the first, but still, that's not saying a whole lot. But I'm really hoping that I would love to see somebody else try to do Berserk. I just don't know if I want them to completely start over from the Millennium or the Golden Age arc again. I know the guys who do the new Castlevania anime on Netflix are huge Berserk fans. I think that they could do a good job. But who knows? I'm just happy with more Berserk comic at this point.
I'm of the opinion that the way that the manga is, it's incredibly difficult to translate it in entirety to a like a television series, given the time constraints, because he purposefully made it so that some of the moments in the series are going to be longer than others, and you have to give them that time. Like, he has a very interesting sense of time in the way that he structures the narrative. That is, it has to be adapted. And you can see, like, when he's alive and he was, like, putting in his 2 cents into the movies and into the anime, you can see when he's doing that and when he's not.
Okay.
Like a big series where a big scene, I mean, where he obviously said multiple times, no, you have to show this, is the Griffith flashback, where he's, like having that fever dream. Like, he constantly says, no, this scene has to be like incredibly long, and I don't care what else you do. Another example would be
Didn't know that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just you can. I mean, I'm not saying this from personal experience,
Oh,
but what I'm saying is you can tell that he's when they're asking him, okay, what's important? Like, what can't we skimp on? He's saying, don't skimp on this. I think that he probably did that in the slan sequence for the anime. I think that he did that.
yeah, the where Slan remanifested herself in all the troll guts.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
because you can tell in the manga that like he spends forever building that up, and then in the anime, like the scene like slows down and everything gets very, very like micromanaged in a way that you don't see in a lot of the future episodes.
Okay, yeah, I
I
can
mean,
see that.
I mean, at least with me, I just want it to just be drawn.
Yeah,
I need to see that first before any of that. Like it just feels like by making it all CGI, it just cheapens the art. And as we know, he was a perfectionist, and like every line was important to him. And by making it CGI, it just completely just inhumanizes it and just
well, especially at that time. I feel like CGI is getting way better. Especially, I'm incredibly excited for Dragon Ball Super Superhero. Dumbest name ever, but I think a lot of the promotional trailers and stuff we've seen look incredible. And I think
uh,
well, at least some of the scenes they've shown in the trailers. I haven't watched the movie yet, but and I'm sure there's going to be some bits that are not great, but it's at least showing that it is possible to do some cool stuff with it, and I think it's only going to get better with time. But still, if they were to adapt it, which I feel like it's inevitable. I feel like, especially if they're going to keep on going, it's going to get to a point where somebody's going to pick it up. I would love it to look something like Netflix's Castlevania, where it's not fully CGI, it's mostly drawn.
right.
But
I disagree. I'm sort of on Steve's side. I think that you gotta just do classic hand animation.
yeah,
I don't
just
think.
do like a
Yeah,
new season of the '90s anime.
yeah. Like I don't think that you can. I think that it's difficult, but like the point that everyone is making when they're criticizing Berserk is that like you're trying to adapt like somebody's like perfect vision, like
Yeah.
a genius artist's like thing, and you're not putting the time and energy into it. And
Yeah.
like so, and like that's the problem, and it's a lot of money is the issue to animate like that.
Oh,
And
true.
and it's just too,
Absolutely.
like, not to be cliche or anything, but it literally like just takes the soul out of it. Like you can just tell there's a lot lost. Like just the amount of shading that he always put into, like, and also too just that's why one of the few moments in the series, in the new series, I actually liked, was when they go into the area where I can never pronounce her name, but Shirks.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
I
like
was also worried about that when we started the podcast. I was like, shit, I'm not going to be able to get Shirike's name right.
yeah, but yeah, when they go to her home, like the the background looked drawn, and that was the only time when I was watching it where I actually felt like I was watching the original anime. Like,
Yeah,
even though,
that,
I mean, the characters themselves were kind of ruined, but it's just like that background, that backdrop. It's like I got some of it. It's like,
Mhm.
by using that CGI, you lose that. Like there's just something, like, it looks crisp or whatever, but it just
yeah.
loses that soul to it, and you can't.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know,
I would disagree. I'm not with the. I agree with the Berserk newer anime, but I think it is entirely possible. It's just, as you guys pointed out, it would take time, money, and the right people to do it. Because really, the big thing that has sold me over the years is I'm a huge Naruto fan, and they have made video games for Naruto that redo the story and redo some of the best fights, and they do like quick time events. But it just, the way the look that they have achieved with like the storytelling in those games made me a believer that 3D animation can be incredibly effective in adapting great moments, and even in the case of those games, it made some of those moments even better. So I think with the right team and the right time, it's completely possible. But we live in a world where people are investors aren't necessarily the most patient and willing to throw endless money to make something perfect. But
And that's sad.
it
It's
is.
sad. I feel like even as early as 10 years ago, you'd still would have, like, if you'd played your cards right and you'd made the right pitch, you could have found the right studio to do it right. And at this point, they just don't have a good system in animation to, like, support something like a good Berserk series.
I feel like it's getting a little bit better, especially with the transition from weekly scheduling. Like One Piece still does it, and
Yeah.
every once in a while they deliver some of the best looking episodes ever. But others, like I'd say Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero Academia, more popular ones right now, do the yearly schedule where the teams have the time to put into it and to varying levels of success. But and then you have stuff like Arcane come out on Netflix that are just some of the most beautiful things you'd ever seen, and I think those teams had plenty of time and some of the best talent ahead of them too. So
Well, I mean, like, I'll give a for instance. So you keep on bringing up the Castlevania, and
sure, yeah.
Castlevania, I am not going to lie, is a beautiful series. It's a truly beautiful series. It has some of the worst dialogue, and that's because it's written by Warren Ellis, and Warren Ellis is a horrible criminal. But, like,
Oh, really? I haven't heard about this.
yeah. Oh, you haven't seen this? Oh, Jesus.
Oh no, we might have to talk about that off camera, unless.
Yeah, he got canceled hard. That man.
Oh boy,
But
I didn't hear about that.
Whatever the case, yeah, no, very bad. But whatever the case, it's like this is a tragedy of animation in general, which is they never seem to have the right elements together to create something truly legendary. And when they do, it's always lacking in something. And it's always sort of, if it starts doing something good. My favorite example in Castlevania would be what's his name? What's the necromancer's name?
Oh, Saint Germain.
No, not Saint Germain. Not Saint Germain. He's the one who builds all the monsters.
Dracula's two assistants.
Yeah. The free one, not the enslaved one.
Oh, okay. I can't remember his name. Isaac.
Yeah, Isaac. Yeah, that's what it is. His story where he's journeying around and he's like fighting magical like tyrants and stuff like that. That's a really cool subplot on that show.
Mm-hmm.
And then where do they go with it?
Yeah, he kind of just he takes out the end of season 3 the really powerful necromancer, which was a feast of animation wise. He had like a whole planet of dead bodies flying at him and stuff. And then after that it's just like, okay, well I guess I should go tie up this other plot thread that we needed tied up for this entire series. But after they start having philosophical conversations with his fly friend, then he just like changes his whole direction, it felt like.
And it's a problem where you're not. I mean, firstly, it's a problem of over complicating your characters in the name of having the plot that you want, when a simple solution would do. And the other problem is not appreciating the way that your characters evolve throughout the story, I suppose is what I guess I'm getting at.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. I thought you were not. Sorry.
What I was going to say is, and especially Berserk gets this 110% as a manga. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of management of the action.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not always something that studios want to put time into. Because as you said, they have like all these things are very expensive, yada yada yada, fan demands, like doing like I don't know. I almost wish that you could kind of go back to the '90s and just have them all be super long and with those like a bunch of terrible filler. Because at least then things evolved. You know what I mean?
Well, true, and I kind of feel like, to add on to that, I feel like the major difference is a united front. Like if your animators, your storytellers, if everyone is working on the same project and has the same vision, then you can create something lovely. But in the case of like Castlevania, I almost feel like they had the same writers for like each season. They had different writers for each season. It felt like it didn't feel like, especially with Isaac's story we're just bringing up, they had a set of writers come or for him for season 3 to take him on some crazy adventures, and then season 4 happened and they had different writers and they're like, oh, we're not really sure what we wanted to do with this, so let's do this other thing. And that's kind of something that I feel like is a hindrance with the thing I was saying earlier on how some animes, would have an episode every week and they'd be super long, and you have a bunch of filler stuff that would sometimes tell really interesting stories, and other times it would not. But the problem with that is like you have one team put out a new season of an anime, and then that anime gets received fairly well, but then the people who worked on that get hired to do bigger, better things or other projects. So then you're having to bring in new people to do the new season and stuff like that. And that, unfortunately, I don't feel like would work with Berserk. You would almost need the same team.
The market in the animation studio system itself doesn't work like that anymore.
Right.
It doesn't support the kind of way that you might want to do that.
Yeah,
at least
it's a huge project, so it would almost need that. And it's one of those things. Anytime somebody brings up like a new Berserk series or something like that, I see plenty of those comments. It's unadaptable. And they might be right.
I mean, just to jump in, like just saying the same thing. It's like it might not be adaptable, but the first step is to focus on the art and to not CGI it. I mean, again, that's just like my only thing. Like we just have to see where that goes first, and then we'll find out. But it's like that is just the thing that I mean, there's a lot to Berserk, why I love it, but it's really one of the first things is that its art is so iconic, and it creates this whole atmosphere that I haven't been able to feel in any other manga. Any sign-in, like I've been reading a lot of sign-in, I can't find it, and it's like the art is where you first start to create that type of energy, and that's you need that first before. Yeah. Anything else? That's all I can say on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, let that lead into me introducing how I got into Berserk. And the answer is that I got into Berserk because I was a fan of Dark Souls.
Hell yeah!
And, man. Oh, there you go.
Among other games like Drakengard and the games of Yoko Taro, Hidetaka Miyazaki, the auteur who made Dark Souls. All of these game directors keep on referencing Berserk. And I remember watching the last episode of the television series at the recommendation of a friend. But, I started to get more into it, and I watched a few more episodes, and I watched some of the movies. And I was like, there's an interesting thing that Berserk has. Like, it has a je ne sais quoi. It has a style to its own. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's something that it's doing in terms of the unity of the art and the moral message and in some ways I guess the lyricism of the panels and stuff like that. That it's making something that we don't normally see. So Screen Rant didn't really do a lot of manga, but they started doing it a little bit more at the beginning of 2021. And I started doing Berserk, and I said, well, okay, I guess I better go through the whole series. And I did at the end of 2020, I think. And I'll never forget just like this realization that like even if it's like the most messed up thing in the world, you have to look at the guy who's drawing it, and you have to say, okay, is the man who is like creating this drawing like a bad man? Is he trying to hurt me?
Yeah.
And the answer is no, of course he's not. Like, do you think he's a bad guy? No, all he wants to do is tell you how bad it is to like hurt other people. And the idea that there's like this beating heart of moralism right at the center of Berserk has always been a real sort of interesting thing to me because of how dark it is. So anyway, that's that story.
Oh man.
No, I completely agree. I mean, it was the only other series where I've gotten that feeling, like having to find out who the mangaka is, like who is the person behind the pen, was a Fujimoto of Chainsaw Man. It's just like one of those things where it's like, what is making you write this way? Why is it like, what happened to you? Like, why is this driving you? But yeah, and unfortunately, I don't know much about Fujimoto in relation to Kentaro Miura. But yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Like, you have to look at him and go at where it comes from to understand, get the full scope of why are we seeing it the way that it's being shown. But yeah, I completely agree.
Which
yeah,
before you jump into that, Stephen, I just to go off of Andy. I one reason back when Miura was still alive, there was that running joke that Berserk was consistently hitting or getting taking his time to get new chapters out because he was obsessed with playing like anime girl games or something like that. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but apparently there's like a gaming series where you play as like anime girls and you dress them up and have them do like concerts and stuff like that. And apparently he was like so obsessed with those games that it was causing him to not come out with chapters of Berserk. And I just love the idea of this man who loves these adorable anime girl games are writing chapters about eclipses and everything that was going on in the series.
No, but it makes perfect sense because he treasures their innocence and he doesn't like how the culture tries to twist it. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'm surprised you guys hadn't heard about that, but yeah, I think that's a great take on it. he treasures innocence so much. But he is.
It's like almost like a kid doing it. I can't believe that's so funny.
Yeah, I'll have to find that article and I'll send it to you guys. But it's something I read years ago, and it just tickled me endlessly. Especially whenever a new chapter would come out, I'd be like, "Oh man, this."
Because I don't know, because it makes perfect sense. Because he's always going like, "Why would you ever like say anything mean about like?" Like for instance, the character Ismay is sort of like he's always criticizing Disney. So like the character of Esme, who's the mermaid, is a joke on the Little Mermaid, and she's always naked. And like there's the whole what's that whole
the Tinkerbell.
The Tinkerbell. What's her name again? Rosine. Oh my god, Rosine, just worst. And it's like. That totally makes sense because, like, what he's saying is, like, why are you constantly making these, like, innocent, like, young girls into these, like, proto-sexual images? They're just, like, trying to have a nice day.
They're just trying to have a nice day.
Yeah, they're just hanging out. They're not doing anything to make you think otherwise. It's all in your head, man. You gotta stop. Get out of the gutter. Yeah. Oh man.
He's sort of funny. Like this is why I'm like, there's a sort of a funny side to Miura. It's very dark, but there's like a little bit of like a humor to him that is very sort of like boyish at the heart of Berserk. I've always thought.
And in our podcast, I definitely don't claim to be a manga expert or anything like that, and a lot of you guys have really helped educate me on like the difference between like shonen and seinen, and I don't know. I've always thought of like Berserk is kind of a shonen. Like there's always kind of a dark humor to it, and there's a silliness every once in a while, but it just doesn't focus on it like other series like One Piece and others
Also,
do.
yeah, I mean, I'm glad you brought that up too. I mean, because there's that whole, most of shonen, they have an almost ridiculous focus, zoom in, if you will, on a dream of the main character, and that is like everyone has a dream, but the fact how you get invested in the character is just how obsessed they are in attaining that dream and how it's just unshakable, and that's how you're able to relate to them or be inspired by them. And Berserk still has that. It's just that it was twisted in its own way. I mean, just the whole Griffith's dream and being swept into his dream, like it's the same type of trope, if you will, just in a different way. But yeah, it's I was thinking about it the other day, actually. It's like, Berserk isn't a shonen, but it kind of is. And
Hmm.
what you were saying just now, but then also the obsession with dreams. Yeah, it's yeah, interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Steven, how did you get into the series, man?
Oh yeah, so mine's kind of funny. It's like, so I was at a friend's house. I was 16, I don't know, and we were just watching a bunch of anime. That's what we did. We hung out and watched anime. And at one point, like, it was getting pretty late, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever seen Berserk?" I'm like, "No, I never heard of it." And he's like, "Oh, let's start watching it." So we start watching it, and he ends up passing out, and I can't go to sleep. Like, I'm just like, "Oh my God!" Like, watching it, watching it, watching it all night. Like, I'm still awake the next day, but I still had, there was still a few episodes left. So then he was like, "Hey, how about you can borrow it or whatever." So I took it home that night and watched the rest of it,
And this
and my
was
mind was
the
completely
this
blown.
was the
Yep.
'90s anime.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And then my mind was completely blown. So I basically watched like all 25 episodes, like, in like probably almost as fast as you could watch. So then just like after, like, because I couldn't stop watching them, like, at his house, didn't fall asleep, and then as soon as I got home, I finished watching it, and then I was reached the ending, and I was like, oh my God, and then just delved into the forums online, and then found the manga, and then started reading that, and then the rest is history. But yeah, no, like, it was just one of those series where it hasn't. I've never had that reaction in a long time, where it was just I couldn't stop, and
Hmm.
was just completely immersed in it. So yeah, that is my story.
Well, thanks for sharing, guys. This has been well, a lot of fun, and b one of the longest podcasts we've done. So, uh,
Oh,
rightfully deserved. I've been anxious to talk about Berserk for a while, and we've got we you know what I think we'll keep on doing it. I think we'll once new chapters come out. I'm excited to talk more about it with you guys. But yeah, unless you guys have anything else you'd like to say about the new chapters, I think we'll go ahead and move into plugs and recommendations.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I'm getting close to my time, so I'm good with that.
All right, guys. Well,
I think I've said everything.
all right, excellent, excellent. Well, yeah, if we come up with more, definitely write those thoughts down, and we'll be happy to talk about them on our next
Oh, wait,
episode.
wait, wait. No, no, no. One thing. I just
Yeah.
looked at my notes. Sorry. Oh yeah. So the main conflict of the series now is that if Guts actually gets enough power to kill Griffith, he will also be killing his son.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, poor guts.
Yep.
And maybe that's why Record will have to do it.
Yeah, well, I don't know because I mean, I still feel like we don't know enough about how strong the connection is between Moonchild and Griffith. Like, is he 100% like always Griffith, or is Griffith able to
They
like
share a body.
they share a body? So unless Guts can kill the the full demon spirit astral form of Griffith, that may separate the two. But I feel like there's still so much to know about it. But it does make me terrified for the next time if Moonchild shows up again as a child.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't know if that innocent child is still there, but according to what you're saying, Andy, he is. He's just possessed by Griffith. So, oh man, that's a bummer. I just we need more.
That's Berserk for you. It's all a huge bummer.
Well, now I don't know what to think or do with myself. Well,
it's okay. There's cool sword fights. There's a lot of cool sword fights.
Yeah, just push that into the back of the head. All the sad stuff. Just go to the cool big sword fights. Well, I guess check out Mega Manga Mondays and other episodes. Please, yeah, plugs and recommendations after that. But perfect ending for this. And on that bombshell, please check out other episodes of Mega Manga Monday. We do other discussions for One Piece, Jujutsu Kaisen, Dragon Ball Super, all kinds of stuff. Also find us on Twitter at @mmanga Mondays, and reach out. Let us know what your thoughts are on the new chapters of Berserk, or if you have any comments on any of our thoughts, feel free to reach out and we'll be happy to get back to you. Also check out ScreenRant.com for all your movie news, gaming news, and comic news. My buddies here write lots of very interesting, introspective articles and news on different comic series, Marvel, DC, and manga. So definitely check that out if that's your cup of tea. Also, I, Jason Hahn, have a YouTube channel called Honzy and Friends. I like to stream cool video games, usually have some friends on, we have some laughs, have a good time, so check that out. Steven, any plugs or recommendations, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say, just recently, I've been getting back into Manga Plus, which is the Shonen Jump Plus extension of Shonen, where it's basically a lot of the big names right now that are a little too risque for publication in the main Shonen Jump, like Dan to Dan and Kaiju number 8. There's two new series in there that are actually completely stunning. They just have one chapter out, and it just goes to show, especially because a lot of the newest series on Shonen Jump have been really a miss for me. I haven't been getting that swell of feelings, but there's two in the Shonen Jump Plus app, more Manga Plus, that have been really resonating with me. One is Stage S, and then the other one is Make the Exorcist Fall in Love. I don't want to go too long into them, so I'll be writing articles on those. So rather than taking more time here, since it's been almost 2 hours, I'll just say that I'm very excited about those two series. Like, they're bringing in, like, a lot of the Shonen Jump series. For some reason, there's little to no romance, even though romance is a huge driver and especially can lead to the most intense forms of violence and the need to protect others. And both of these series have that. So I'm just glad that there's some new shonen that is bringing romance-fueled action back into the story. So yeah, look for those. Those are some good series coming out.
Awesome. Well, check the description for. I'll have those mangas in there. And yeah, definitely check those out. You say those are on the Manga Plus app, or are they also just on the Shonen Jump app?
No, so only like the really popular Manga Plus titles go on the Shonen Jump app, like Dan to Dan and Kaiju number 8, and then also Spy Family. That's another Manga Plus that have just come over because they're really popular. But right now, only those two can be found on the Manga Plus app, which is owned by the same company that does Shonen Jump. Yep.
Well, all right, excellent. Andy, how about you, man?
I don't have any plugs, but if you guys read regular mainstream comics, the new Harley Quinn series is among my favorites. It has
awesome.
amazing art by Riley Rossmo and is written by Stephanie Phillips with a master's touch. So please buy a copy. And also the recent Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: The Last Ronin series is among
That
my
was good.
favorites in many, many years. So those would be my recommendations.
Oh, fantastic. And on that Harley Quinn series, how would people find that? Just type in new Harley Quinn, or is there a special name for it?
No, just Harley Quinn. It's the mainstream series.
Oh, okay, I got you. Awesome. Well, yeah, check those out if those are your cup of tea. And thanks again for your time today, guys. It's been a blast talking Berserk with you, and incredibly excited for chapter 367. But I hope you guys have a good one, and thanks again for your time, and I'll talk to you next time.
Groovy.
Awesome.
All right, take it easy, guys.